Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Viewers, since the establishment of China, US, and the Western relationship, the Western countries are pressurizing China to divorce its socialism ideology and adopt the liberal ideology and the liberal system. However, China is resisting and is devising its own path of the development. The path is characterized by learning and improving from other models and tailoring the model according to the needs and the ground reality of the country and execute this process under this model by making it the part of the socialism. And it was successful. China has achieved many milestones by adopting this strategy, advising its own path, the path of the socialism, with the Chinese characteristics. However, the Western country did not like the idea. They started to work against China. They started to instigate the people of China or trap the people of China in the disguise of human rights or the liberal democracy or the liberal values and many other things. Unfortunately, some Chinese people they were trapped in this scheme. And this whole process culminated into Tiananmen Square in 1989. And China was able to control, and China was able to absorb the shock of the Tiananmen Square. However, West did not stop there. After the launch of the Go Global policy and China's joining of WTO, the West came up with the new ideas and they started to consolidate their actions. They started to create challenges for the China. The first consolidated effort was President Obama's policy of pivot of Asia. It was aimed to undermine China, contain China, and do everything which can create challenges for China and stop the economic rise of China. Therefore, they built the alliances, and in those alliances, they kept the China out. For example, Obama administration came up with the idea of transatlantic trade and investment partnership, but they did not allow China to be part of that. But China continued to grow. China did not China did not give much heed to these interventions. Unfortunately, simultaneously, these countries started to create challenges on other fronts. For example, they were supporting separatists and the terrorists in China with a single purpose to disintegrate China or contain China. They supported the Xinjiang terrorists. They brought the terrorists from the other parts also. Also, they provided them the financial help. They provided them the different types of the weapons to conduct terrorism in China. But China was able to control them. Now they are doing the propaganda of human rights violations of the Uyghur Muslims, other concentration camps, many other things. But these are the propagandas. Then they moved to another strategy. They promoted anti-Chinese forces in Hong Kong. They supported rather than they cultivated many people who can create challenges in the Hong Kong and they can go for the slogans of the democracy and the human rights. That created a challenge for China because anti-Chinese system or the anti-socialism forces joined hand in Hong Kong and they started to go for the violent protest rather than they were going for the rights. And the Western countries were declaring them the hero of democracy or something else. But China was again able to control them. Unfortunately, after the second failure, the West did not stop there. Rather than stopping there and trying to build new mechanisms of the cooperation, the West started to devise new tools. Here comes the President Trump. He started anti-China rhetoric and he intensified rather than anti-China rhetoric. He started to blame China for every ill in the US and the world and launched a trade war against China. It was expected that after President Trump, when the Biden came into the power, the Biden will do much better and will reverse the process of the trade war. Unfortunately, despite that Biden and the Trump, they are the opposite poles, but they have the consensus in anti-China rhetoric or actions. He intensified the trade war. He banned the Chinese tech companies. He introduced the Chips and Science Act, solely focused on creating challenges for the Chinese tech companies. And it was an attempt to discourage the American company to sell the chips or other technology to China. And he intensified further by taking many other actions, including bringing many other countries and pressurizing other countries to stop their trade relationship with China. From there, the President Trump again came into the power and intensified the trade war. Despite all these tactics, China remained cool and focused on the development and focused on the welfare of its people, the prosperity of its people, and building the strong security mechanisms. It further antagonized the anti-Chinese forces. They launched a Great Game 2. The Great Game 2 has been going on for some years now, even before the first administration of President Trump, but it has been intensified in the last few years. They are trying to antagonize China. They are trying to do everything to contain the China, and they are running the campaigns, they're doing everything for many years. But in the last few years, they forgot one thing. They could not understand the one thing that China has become strong, and China is not ready to accept or to tolerate any foul play or the foul molding. So China is ready to reply. China is ready for tit for tat. They could not recognize, they could not understand this. Further, the rise of President Xi Jinping to power, the becoming the paramount leader of China, the whole dynamic started to change. He was building the capacity of China to fight these wars on the equal footing. He was preparing the country to absorb the shocks of the trade war. He was pushing the tech companies to become self-reliant. He was pushing the people to become more vigilant, so no democracy or human rights propaganda can work there. So China has become a strong country. So that's why there's a consensus. So the Great Game took a new turn, and it became the Great Game 2 against China. And it's in the Great Game 2 in China, against the China, there is a new player, Israel. That is very astonishing. Why is Israel part of this anti-China alliance? Rather than this anti-China alliance, which is leading this war, the Great Game 2, is being run by US and Israel. Why it is this? Why Israel is there? Israel does not have any border with China. Israel is not a big power to compete with China at a global level, apparently. Then why Israel? There are three main reasons, which when we dig to the question, we find three main reasons. There can be more. But the three main reasons are: first, Israel feels China is a hurdle, right, and a hurdle in the creation of the greater Israel. Why? Because China is asking for the two-state solution for the Palestine issue. China is strongly advocating for the establishment of Palestine state, and China is against the genocide in the Palestine. Number two, Israel wants a chaos or the widespread conflict in the Middle East to achieve its objective of the greater Israel. That's why it was patting different countries against each other, or they're trying to sow the seed of conflict among different countries. But Chinese ideology is work through the partnership, and if there is a problem, solve it through the dialogue and the development. And China is applying the same policy or the philosophy in the case of Middle East. And it helped Iran and Saudi Arabia to solve their conflict and rebuild their relationship. It antagonized Israel. It is against the interest of the Israel. They don't want a peaceful Middle East. Third, the third pillar of Chinese Israel's plan, or the Greater Israel plan, is to dominate the global economic and the financial systems. They already have dominated the Western system, but they don't have any say in Chinese economic and the financial system. They want to counter it. They want to control it, but China is not allowing. So that's why Israel is part of this anti-China in Nexus in the Great Game-2, rather than Israel is a leading force with USA. Because USA, there are many theories, there are many people who believe that the US policy is controlled by the Jewish people, and Israel control the Jewish policy through these Jewish people. So Israel and US are the major player, and they have intensified or launched a new war against China. In the Great Game 2, this anti-China nexus, they are coming up in two types of the strategy. Number one, to intensify their previous campaigns or the wars. For example, they have intensified the propaganda against China. In the last few years, they were propagating that Chinese initiatives are anti-globalization. Chinese initiatives are creating problem, and Chinese initiative will hurt the countries. For example, they were telling the people the Belt and Road Initiative is a debt trap, which is not, which is an economic initiative. The real debt trap comes from the IMF or the World Bank, but they are running the campaigns. They are also trying to portray China as a human rights violator. Second, now they also have started to attack or undermine Chinese partners. Those partners which have the economic relationships or which have other types of the relationship with China, they started to attack them. In new strategy, they are attacking Chinese economy and its partners' economy. For the weak country, it's using something else, and for China, they're using a different strategy. For example, they are pressurizing Pakistan to come out of CPEC and reconsider its relationship with China. Otherwise, be ready to face the IMF, FATF, or other institutions. They will choke the Pakistani economy, and Pakistan is facing the brunt of this policy because during the last decade, Pakistan has to deal with the IMF, FATF, and other Western institutions to sustain its economy and to bring the investment and the other to address other economic challenges. In the case of China, first they have launched a trade bar, but no, they have moved to the crisp measure, such as the forceful take of a Chinese chip company in Netherlands. This is just beginning. On the other hand, they are also trying to isolate China. They are trying to punish those countries who are building the close relationship with China. The one example we have discussed about Pakistan. The other example, most prominent and most recent example is the US has imposed travel restrictions on some Central American countries, people and their relatives. Why? They say the US is of point of view that they are undermining global governance and security system by building relationship with China. They started to target them. Number four, they also want to create chaos in the surrounding of China, and they have taken many steps. And they are trying to create conflicts in the surrounding of China, like India-Pakistan conflict, or it's also we can say, so there's a Ukraine and Russia crisis and the re-emergence of the Taliban. And when there are many people who believe the US withdrawal from the Afghanistan was the part of this strategy. And if we look at the recent actions of the Taliban regime, so we can find it. So Taliban started to pick fight with the Pakistan, and they are trying to, and they are doing the terrorism in Pakistan, and they got the support of India. And the Taliban regime is also interested to build the relationship with Israel. Although they present themselves as the model for the Muslim country or the leaders of Muslim countries, but by knowing that there is a committing genocide of Muslims in Palestine, they want to build a relationship with Israel. They are trying to create challenges. Why Pakistan is so much focus of Israel? Because Israel believe the Pakistan is a major hurdle to create chaos in the surrounding of China. And Pakistan is resisting the terrorist organizations to work against the Chinese interest. So that's why they're focusing. There is one more reason. In the recent years, Pakistan has emerged as a stabilizing security stabilizer factor in Middle East, which Israel does not like. If Israel does not like, that means the US does not like it. So they are trying to create challenges for the Pakistan. Moreover, so it was some expert also say that the withdrawal was also designed to use the Taliban and Afghanistan to create challenges in the Xinjiang region of China. So they are creating problem. They did not stop here. They are also trying to destabilize the region where the China have some economic or technological or the partnership or trade interest. There are two prominent examples. Number one, the Middle East. So China is the biggest importer of the oil energy resources from Middle East. China is also helping them helping them to build their industry and the technological infrastructures to bring prosperity and solve their issues through the dialogue and development. That's why they started to target the Middle East. And Israel launched an all-out war against in Palestine, and they are expanding this war to the other countries. Whenever Israel wants, they attack the other Arab countries like the Qatar. They have attacked. They also started a war with Iran, although they got a very firm reply, but still they want to reignite a war there. And second example is Euro-Asia. China again has a deep interest there. On one side, China is importing the energy, building the trade linkages. On the other hand, China is building the rail network that connect with the Europe and other parts. So China can build the new trade routes, land trade routes. And Israel and US and their allies don't like it, and especially the Jewish company because they are not getting much business there, and they fear that China will taking over their business in Europe also. So they don't like it. That's why many people believe they lowered the Ukraine in a war with Russia. In this way, they're trying to create the challenges for China in the region. Moreover, under the cover of war, the many Jewish companies are buying the land in Ukraine and are building their empires, but they are asking the Ukrainian people to die for them. So these are two concrete examples. So they have also started to create challenges for China and destabilize the region where the China is working. And then on the lastly, if we look, there is also some analysis indicate that if Israel and US fail to do so, to antagonize China, to entangle it in the conflict, or the creating some problem in the surrounding, or could not contain the Chinese rise, they can go for a hard war with China. And there are indications, like now we have seen the Thailand speak the issue with China. The Taiwan question is already there. They are trying to create challenge from the Taiwan. They are betting the Taiwan to become an independent country, so there can be an other conflict, and they can use this to undermine China. In this context, China need to be very careful because US, the Israel is a very dangerous enemy because it's work from behind. It does not show up as a opponent or enemy. It worked through the other countries like the US or the Western countries. So China need to be very careful. And it's a good to know that China is building those mechanisms to counter any such attempts. China has a very strong its own governance model. It has a very robust trade system, and it has a self-reliant the technological sector and the defense and security system, and is the strengthening its credentials. However, China also have to protect its partners, and China is cognizant of this fact rather than has anticipated a situation many years ago. That's why President Xi Jinping has started to launched many initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative, which have 153 members. China has invested more than 1 trillion in that program. Then China launched the Global Development Initiative. China has completed 1,800 projects and had extended 23 billion US dollar for those projects during the last 5 years. In the next 5 years, China is planning to go further to a 2,000 small yet beautiful projects development, which will be mostly focused on the livelihoods under the BRI. And there, China has also launched Global Civilization Initiative. But the real challenge is the security side. because there are many weak countries economically and on the security level. On the economic side, China is somehow helping them. But on the security side and on the management side, so there are some still challenging. For example, right now, the global governance system is fractured. The global governance system cannot protect the weak and the small countries. Rather than whenever a weak country is attacked, the global governance system help them. Like Libya, the UN facilitated the attack of US and the France and the European Union on the Libya. They robbed all the resources of Libya. Libya before the attack was a prosperous country, and the people did not have to worry about the life, or the people did not have to worry about the food, or the electricity, or the education. But now it's a home to the terrorists and a home to the development challenges. So China have to work on the governance, the global governance issues. So to make it more pro people and the system which can help the protect the rights of the people. And the good thing is that China recently also have launched global governance initiative. It is hoped that China will use that initiative to reform the system or to create a new global governance system where the rights of the weak countries are protected. Second, security. China has launched a global security initiative many years ago, but now it is the time to take the hard actions because we have seen during the last few years. So the Western countries, US and Israel and their partners, they're trying to create problem in different regions of the world. For example, the most recent is the war between India and Pakistan, and again the terrorism from Afghanistan in the Pakistan. And then other African countries, they're also facing the threats. And the Latin America, Venezuela is facing the threat. And maybe they include more countries from the region on the threat list. So the US, their allies are threatening them. They are threatening them for the physical action or the physical attack. So in this context, China will have to strengthen the global security initiative by erecting new institutional mechanisms or taking the concrete actions. There are two proposals. There can be many proposals, but there are two proposals. First of all, China will have to build a security shield for its partners, especially for the weak countries, which will act as a deterrent against the bullying, against these hegemonic powers, against Israel, against the US and their partners in India and the European Union. So China should devise to a security shield for the weak country. So everybody know that, look, if these countries are being attacked or their sovereignty is compromised, so China will help them. China will, second, build strong partnerships with the weak countries, a partnership come alliance, because they also need security. And under that partnership, China should launch joint exercises and technology development, weapon technology development ventures to strengthen the capacity of those countries. It will again act as a deterrent. So there would be no need of the war. So these are the two actions. There can be many other actions, but on the top of the two actions. So in the conclusion, China needs to be very careful in devising its a path and be very careful to pursue its a dream or in fact, because in the coming days, China will also see some friends who are actually their enemies. China also have to build the strong mechanism to protect its partners, because if China fail to do so, so US and Israel will be successful in isolating China. Because if China don't protect the weak countries, they will feel insecure and they will fall for the hegemony of the West, US and Israel. They will do what US tell them to do. These countries need trust and the confidence that some other countries, someone is here to help them, someone is here to protect them. So that is the biggest thing I think China should learn from all these, from this discussion. For the feedback and more, you can contact us. Thank you so much.